Hello and welcome to our first ever episode of Connversa's Company Podcast, which is not the official name. However, we will be deciding that before our next episode. We're very prepared here. But I digress. Allow us to introduce ourselves and what we are here about with Connversa. I'm Caitlin, by the way. I'll be today's host, and I'm actually going to hand it over to Jeremy, the owner and founder of Connversa. Jeremy, would you give us a lovely little elevator pitch about what we are?
Sure. So what are we? Connversa Podcasting is, the name Connversa is a mashup of two words, connection and conversation. And because that's what we do. We help people connect through conversation. And by people, I mean specifically B2B businesses. Those are our customers, the kind of businesses that in order to do business, they need to talk to, they need to get to know certain kinds of people, buyers, decision makers. And over here at Connversa, we think that podcasting is one of the best ways to do that. We help people start podcasts. They invite those people that they want to get to know onto the podcast, and they have great conversations. And that's how they help grow their networks and grow their company. So that's what we're all about.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully put. So now that we know a bit more about Connversa and what we are, I think we should all introduce ourselves, but with a twist. So I would like to introduce a new segment to the group called, and then cue scary music that I couldn't find yet, so I'll insert it in post. Bum, bum, bum. So the scary music signifies horror stories. So get your flashlights, turn down the lights, and let's tell some scary stories about editing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to randomly select one of you. So be afraid, be very afraid. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to introduce yourself, what you do here at Connversa, and then go into your spooky story. And so looking at our little group, I pick eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Kelsey, you're up.
How did I know this was going to happen? I'm Kelsey, obviously a producer here at Connversa. And horror stories are one of those things. Honestly, I probably have thousands of options. I've been doing this for quite a while, prior to Connversa as well. So, I don't know. It's tough. We've all heard Hostzillas, right? And I think this is where I'm going to go with my horror story. Like Bridezillas, well, there's been Hostzillas as well. And I don't know if you guys have seen the meme yet, but there's one, it's a TikTok that was turned into a meme. A guy getting his hair cut, and he keeps pointing to the same exact spot on his hair to get it cut 1,000 times by the barber. This is a Hostzilla. This is what I mean by Hostzilla. They want the exact thing primed the exact same way. Doing an intro-outro recording, we all know how long that should take. It should take about 30 seconds to a minute to 2 minutes long at the most. I have spent upwards of 2 hours with a prior client recording an intro-outro because of one word. They could not say the word "the" correctly. Yeah, simple word, right? What? Simple word. They went to Ohio State, so if anybody knows anything about Ohio State, they say the T-H-E, and that's how they pronounce the. Well, it's actually T-H-E-E. Yeah, so it's this whole thing. But no, I spent 2 hours with this client recording, and they couldn't say the word "the," which is really unfortunate because obviously their podcast title starts with "the," and then you say it about 10 other times in just the intro alone. And then in the outro, you see it another 10 times. But yeah, about 2 hours with a client. And I mean, first of all, it sounded fine the first 7 times they said it. But again, it's the Hostzilla. So it's one of those situations where they weren't right with it. They wanted to make it perfect. And 2 hours later, we finally finish our intro outros. And I've never had a more stressful yet entertaining experience on a podcast recording yet, because it was just one of those things you can't make up. It's just how it happens sometimes.
How did they pronounce "the"? What was the problem?
Yeah.
I was going to ask, can you give us
it was just they said "the." They had a little bit of an accent, and so they didn't like their accent, and so they kept going back and saying, no, I want to do it better. It's like, dude, it was fine the first 7 times. We were good the first 7, 8 takes, 9 takes. We were good an hour and 45 minutes ago with all of this. But you know what? They paid, so they got their, the client is always right in that situation, which I've regretted to say I followed through on that one. That one was, I should have been just, no, we should have stopped an hour and a half ago.
Wow. Was it any time, was it just "the," or was it any time the word "the" popped up?
Anytime the word "the" popped up. So THE pops up anywhere in the intro outro.
It's a pretty common word.
Oh yeah, it was about 27
just,
occurrences of it in their intro outro total.
Wow,
Oh,
sounds awesome.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a Hostilla in case anybody's never experienced one before. We have some blessed clients here, like with some of the clients we have at Connversa. So I've not experienced it here. This is prior to, but
wait, and what's the thing about the guy wanting his hair, the same haircut, the same place when his hair cut a million times? What's that about?
It's a meme.
Yeah.
Currently a TikTok. It's based off of a TikTok that's going around right now. A guy gets his hair cut and get it lined up in the front, and so he wants his hairline exactly right, and so he just keeps pointing back to the same exact spot, and getting the barber just to trim it. Just the barber's not trimming anything. First of all, like it's a completely straight line across the top. The barber's no longer trimming anything, but it's just the whole fact that the guy wants something perfected, and it's already perfect, but it's just. Yeah.
Not perfect enough.
Was it one of those situations where you're just sitting there and you're just like, I'm gonna laugh about this in about 10 days. I just gotta get through this and then I can laugh.
It was my young naive producer days. So this is the beginning of COVID when I first started freelancing. I went from corporate trainer to this, and this is when I was young and naive. I was just like, yeah, they're right. Yeah, absolutely. We'll just keep going. I can just edit it out. It'll be fine. Not thinking I have to go through 2 hours of audio on the backside of this to edit it out and do everything there. And yeah, it's definitely I look back at it now and I'm like, wow, what was I doing? That was so silly. But back at the time, it was just, I had no idea what I was expecting. And it was not this, I'll say that. And it put a sour taste in my mouth for a good 2 months to working every time I worked with that client though, for sure.
So we have our first horror story of a Hostzilla striking fear into the hearts of editors and producers everywhere. Transitioning then, Michael, I would like to hear your scary story. Also, what do you do here for Connversa?
Hi. So yeah, I'm Michael. I'm producer here at Connversa. My scary story is going to go kind of along the same lines as Kelsey. I had an instance where we're recording a podcast. We have an hour to record it, right? So think you'll have plenty of time. And then I had another meeting after that, or another recording after that. So the host shows up 20 minutes late. And so we start recording. They're like, oh, it's fine. We're going to cut it down to about, maybe 15, 25 minutes. It goes for an hour. So I've got one laptop to the left of me on the other meeting, on the other recording, getting them going while still trying to maintain eye contact with the with the other recording, like trying to kind of, oh, you didn't like that? Cool. Well, let's do that. Okay, hold on 1 second here. I'm coming back to you. Yeah, that was everybody was really nice, really kind. It was just kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, after this, I'm probably going to have a meltdown, but I'm going to make sure it gets done.
I'm going to smile up until that point, up until the door closes, and then the time is mine.
Did both clients know that that there was someone else you were dealing with, or did you try to pretend that everything was fine?
I pretended everything was fine for as long as I could, and then one of them was like, Michael, it looks like you're doing something else there. And it's like, yeah, so kind of.
No. Of course, you got my full attention. Nice.
I would never.
For full context to listeners, Connversa is a mostly remote recording company. So when he's talking about multiple computers, that's what we're talking about. We're not in a studio usually.
Good clarification. Good job.
Mm-hmm. You were the next to speak, so that kind of scared the audience. So why don't you tell us about your scary story, Josh, and what you do here at Connversa?
Yeah, so I am the director of production. I just make sure everything basically runs day to day at this exact moment. And I work with new clients to get their shows up and running. And my scary story is, I think the thing that scares me the most when I'm recording are airplanes. I think that is the scariest thing. As soon as I start hearing that in my head, in my headphones, like I start to hear the.
Wait, what?
Like I start
How is
getting
it
like
airplanes
chills.
and not trains or buses
You know?
Wait, do you
or a
mean
beeping backing up?
Because airplanes
SUV?
are like well, I would say that like if you have a traffic or something outside, you can run some noise cancellation or something like that, and AI can really do some good work there. It's like it's a constant noise and is going all the time, so it's like, okay, I have this like consistent frequency, and AI can really go in there and cut it out. An airplane, because it's intermittent, and if someone's next to an airport, it is pretty frequent. AI has a really hard time like catching each instance of that airplane. So you do have like a couple of different options, I guess. You could go in and apply AI to all the different instances of an airplane, or you could run it through the whole thing, but then it kind of messes up the instances where there aren't airplanes, and kind of creates this like weird artifacting there. So it's not a particular instance that I'm scared. It is just literally I'm scared.
do you live near an airport?
I don't, but lots of hosts and guests do.
Okay.
I was going to say, do you start every meeting with, "Hey, do you live near an airport by chance? Do I need to prepare for an airplane?"
I need to know.
Like it may not happen.
This is very
but
important. I need you to move.
Is it a county airport or is it an international airport?
Right.
It's like, yeah, I mean, I was just gonna make the joke that it's like, no, you just pack up, get in your car, and just chill out near an airport. Just so it's like, oh, I gotta have content for this meeting, so I better go find an airplane.
No. It's like, all right, I hear an airplane. Everything's got to stop, and you need to move to your closet and put a blanket over you.
And never go by it. Never move to this house ever.
Need to move to a no-fly zone.
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I thought you wanted to be a podcast.
So
host,
Boeing, if
but you live next to an airport.
if Boeing
right?
is out there looking for a podcast company to work with, we'll work with you. Just Josh won't be your producer. I'm sorry.
Correct.
Yeah.
Josh will just be wide-eyed and fearful the whole time.
We're anti-airplane here.
You know what, Josh?
All
We
right.
need to do
Yes.
a podcast episode from an Airbus or like from an airplane. Like, just go do something and
That
just
would
do
be
an
cool.
episode recording from an airplane.
Yeah,
Oh
face
my
your
god!
fears.
I saw a post on LinkedIn once where it was like this voiceover actress, and she was like doing some work on an airplane, and she had like her iPhone and like this Shure mic that's connected to it, and I was like, no, you're not.
She
You're
was
not.
recording voiceover on an airplane?
That was the
No.
implication.
Like with other people sitting around and like,
Other people sitting around her.
that must have been
Yep.
fun for all the other people.
Mhm.
That must have been
Yes.
an airplane scene she was filming.
Mhm.
Yeah, right.
Well, now that we have it's a bird, it's a plane. Oh God, it's a plane. Then so shifting then, Josue, would you like to tell us? Now you mentioned you don't have too many horror stories. So maybe do you have any wholesome stories or stories you find entertaining?
You know what? I just remember of one that I had, a long time ago. Well, first of all, I'm Josue, audio engineer, editor here at Connversa. Back then, I was a producer, and so I'm gonna tell a story when I was working as a producer at Connversa. And so there was this time when I had this client who needed the recording for the next day, and so we started recording. I remember that, and he had a series of slides that he was presenting, but he forgot to bring them to the recording, and so he was really nervous about it. And he also didn't have any headphones. He was like not prepared for the recording at all, and so I was trying to make him feel relaxed and just record, and it's fine. Whatever happens. And so we record the podcast. He forgot all his slides. He just talked out of his brain, and it was really interesting because he actually did a really good job at the presentation. It was just the audio wasn't as great, and so then he needed the recording for next day. This script is not working, and yeah, this script is not working. And so I remember Jeremy was telling me, Josue, we need this recording. We need to get it done for next day. And if you can't make it, just tell me, right? And I'm like, no. Everything is going to be fine. I have this, I have it down. Everything is going to be cool. And so, and then, this script, okay, it's fine. It's not working. I'm just going to do it manually. I'm going to remove all the all the hums, whatever. Yeah, it's cool. It's fine. But then my recording software is crashing. So Logic is crashing. So now, and I usually just edit with Logic. That's what I'm used to. And of course, I have Adobe or whatever, but I prefer Logic over everything. And so everything is crashing. I'm just like trying to relax. I'm like, everything is going to be fine. I have an hour or two to get this down. And so it's already 10 p.m. So the software is not working. This script is not working. And Jeremy's not answering.
Call out.
I might have been asleep. It was like
he was probably drinking
sure.
wine with his friends,
I don't have any friends, so.
And so next day, like 4 a.m. in the morning, I opened this script and then I try to edit, the podcast right away. And so it took me like, an hour and a half to edit the podcast. I sent it. And thankfully, they were able to publish, but it was a nightmare. I remember that because it was just really stressing to have to do that. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was
When
all
you're
actually,
editing-
Josue. That was all a test. I engineered all
it
of
was a
that
test.
behind the scenes. I have
Well,
complete
then, Jeremy, in that
control.
case, I have to ask: have you been testing me the last couple of weeks? Because Jose, you tell me that story, and this has been like my last 2 weeks exactly between what we used to record, between the script, between everything.
I
It's
actually probably
it's all going down.
Actually, Kelsey, I probably did fuck up your thing because I wasn't there you were doing a Riverside recording and at kind of randomly for basically no reason, I just decided to change the login on
This is why I have 50.
Was that literally for like no reason? Jeremy?
Well, I must have had a reason in the moment. I think because it was the old login. It was like Jeremy.
It was still travel knowledge, yeah.
I'm like,
Oh
it
my
should
gosh,
be Connversa.
the
Like, and I
logins.
just, without telling anyone, which is how I prefer to operate, I just, did it. And then I'm like, well, I guess I should let people know. So I sent out the email, and then Josh writes back. He's like, why did you do that?
It's so true.
Like, Kelsey
Why
just.
are you torturing me?
Here's what happened. I ended up with I was telling Michael and Caitlin this before everybody got on. I ended up with 15 audio beds from that recording for three people, 15 audio beds from it. So yes, it did mess it up a little bit.
Listen,
just a tad.
Josh's response back to Jeremy being like, "Oh, hey team, guess what? I did a thing." And Josh's response was so sassy. Can I have permission to put a screenshot up?
Oh, yeah.
In the,
For sure. It's like, what the hell, dude?
It was. I mean, I'll even insert the tone that I personally read it into.
Yeah,
If
it's like,
there's
when
a
did you do
whoa
that?
in there. It's like,
I
when
was
did
like,
this happen?
I don't 20 minutes ago. I don't know.
And my reaction response to it is, I don't know if you guys have seen the End of the World YouTube video from way back. It's like early 2008, 2009, I think. It's the French guy saying "les side." I sent that to Josh. I was just like, "les side." Like, I just can't make it. Like, it was just one of those things. Like, you just can't make it up, and it's like part of the thing. But Jose, as you were telling your story, that's all that popped in my head was like the last 2 weeks of Descript and our recording program not working for us.
It's your trial program. No, okay.
I think, honestly, that's probably Kelsey's part 2 horror story. Jeremy changing emails and not telling us until after.
Just random. Right.
It's you gotta weed out the weak, I guess, or it's just like you gotta test my employees. You gotta keep them on their feet. Gotta keep it exciting.
Little did
a
Jeremy
wrench
know,
here.
I throw enough wrenches in my own way. His wrenches are nothing.
By the way, we should probably bleep out Riverside and Descript.
Well, I didn't say their names until just now.
No, I'm just saying they need to.
It's cool.
They
We
give
used
us
the
a little
hockey
bit
horn
to drop their
to
name.
check your mic on the podcast, so we can use something else here.
Oh, can we use the
Now-
hockey horn again?
We could use a rubber ducky sound. I like that.
So speaking
No,
of
we
the
have to use an airplane.
mastermind,
Okay.
Right.
Speaking of the mastermind behind all like the tech glitches happening right now, Jeremy, do you have a horror story yourself other than causing horror stories?
Yeah, other than being the source of the horror stories. So I'm Jeremy, and my title is CEO, although I'm really not fond of that. It just sounds like, I don't know. I think we could come up with a better title. I'm considering a few. I'm considering Commander. I just like it.
Jedi Master,
like the movie,
like podcaster in chief.
Like I just like Commander. I just like the sound of it, or like the movie Master and
Chaos
Commander. I really like
Creationist.
that movie. Yeah. But anyway, so I got a couple of ones. So one thing that happens every now and again, and this is more funny rather than a horror story, but so on Riverside, when I record, the only recording that I do these days, the only recording I'm sort of equipped to do, and even then I'm probably not really qualified, is for the podcast Engage Your Tribe, which is like an in-house podcast, and we interview VPs of marketing and all that stuff. So to do that, it's always the same link on Riverside. Right? Everyone gets the same link to connect to the recording, right? And there are times when I will just schedule recordings back to back, so a half-hour slot and then the very next half hour, right? So I try usually not to do that, because what can and sometimes does happen, and has occasionally, is doing an interview and just completely lose track of time. And it's creeping up on a half hour, and then we cross it. And then as I'm like finishing up with one person, the next person just pops in, completely unknowing, because there's no waiting room, or I haven't enabled the waiting room, whatever. So they just pop in. I'm like, oh shit. Oh, hi. Wait, I'm not done with it. And it just gets really awkward and confusing. And they're always like, oh, okay, bye. And this is like someone that maybe we want to work with. So I'm like, great start.
Right. You want to
Great
connect
start
with
to this
them.
relationship. So that's always, but it's not a big deal. It's always kind of funny, and everyone laughs, haha, when that happens. I had one time when I was recording, I don't remember which podcast it was for. This was sort of earlier days, before most of you guys were on, back when it was basically still me, or it might have just been me and Josue at that time. But I was recording, and like when you're just engineering, right? You don't necessarily have to pay 100% attention all the time, right? If it's going to be like a longish interview, or at least this is how I approached it, which is maybe why I'm not qualified to do this anymore. But anyway, so the interview starts, hit record, blah blah blah. They're talking about some whatever. It's like, I don't really care what the content is, so I'm just doing other things, checking email, doing this, occasionally checking in. But at some point, I check in and I realize that it's not recording, and it hasn't been for I have no idea how long. And I'm like, fuck, did I not hit record and just told them to start talking? Or did I somehow hit a key and it stopped recording? So I realized that, and I'm like, what do I do? And remember, like, you ever see the movie Terminator, when internally in the Terminator, like a bunch of options pop up? Do you know what I'm talking about? Where it's like, shoot to kill, or do this, or do that. So I'm like running through a bunch of options in my mind. I'm like, do nothing, and then just pretend it's all fine, and then later on just be like, whoops, the recording got destroyed or whatever. Sorry. I'm like, no,
That's
I
valid.
probably shouldn't just straight up lie. Like, that's not good. So I'm like, okay, I just have to. So I, pop in, and I'm like, hey, you guys, and they're right in the middle still of like this really good conversation. So number one, I have to interrupt them and be like, hey, everything's good, except that we actually haven't been recording for the last few minutes, I think. And they were just like, and it, like, that's kind of the worst thing that can happen, because they're having this really good conversation, and you do, and at all costs, you don't want to be like, yeah, we just need to start from the beginning now, or like totally reschedule this.
Yeah.
So on the fly, as they're just waiting, like have them on ice waiting, what I ended up doing is I'm like, okay, wait, hold on. So I went and checked and like opened another thing. Turns out that we actually had been recording for most of the time. It was just for like the last 5 minutes or something. So I was like, okay, just go. And I was able to see like where it stopped and all that. So at the end of the day, they just had to go back. But it took me like a solid 15 minutes to figure that out. So they're just sitting there like wondering what the hell is going on and like who this, how come this idiot can't figure out what's happening.
Right.
And, so I kind of salvaged it at the end, but still it wasn't great. So that was a good one. And then just one last one. Finally, like I used to teach a class at Indiana University. I used to teach in the journalism school, and we'd spend a lot of time on like interviewing techniques. And because students often would assume that it was just very simple or easy. Like you just write a bunch of questions and ask them and record it, and that's fine. I'm like, no, it's a little more complicated than that. If for no other reason than the X factor always is who you're interviewing. Everyone's a little different. And you'll get all kinds of people. At best, it's someone who's maybe done this before, or they're just like good in that context, right? And but at worst, you get all kinds of people. Some people who just like are hard; they don't talk much, and you have to really draw them out. Or the opposite, and the opposite is someone who just doesn't shut up ever. And So I remember distinctly interviewing someone. I don't remember who it was or what the topic was or anything, but they literally started talking before I even asked a single question. They just were so excited to like get going that I'm like, hey, okay, so great. So we're just going to settle. And they're like, okay, great. Blah, 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 blah. And they just launched in. I was like, oh shit. So before I even hit record, they just started talking. So I hit record and just sort of wind them up and let them go. And it just went on and on and on. And I don't even remember, not only that, but I don't know what they were talking about. Like it wasn't exactly what we'd agreed to talk about. And they were just off on running on some crazy bullshit.
Whoops.
And, it was, I think in the end, I was able to use like some small fraction of it. But, you just find yourself trapped in some conversation with some like weirdo who just is like, has like logorrhea. You just cannot stop talking. And at a certain point, you're just like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to let this go. And
cut your losses.
Whatever.
Just let it ride.
And even I remember during that, he went on for so long, I stopped listening. I was just like, I was on the screen. So I sort of had to maintain eye contact, but I'm like checking email. I'm looking over here, doing this, trying to be productive. Because whatever it was we were recording was not productive. So that was kind of funny. And in the end, it was sort of okay. But I'll stop there. That's enough stories for me.
That actually brings up a good question. Like,
the irony.
What's worse though is having somebody that doesn't shut up, or on the flip side of things, having a host that never listens to their guest, and so the responses are always like, "Yeah, totally." Jumps into the question.
Bro.
Like, what is the worst one? I honestly I can't decide which one's worse personally.
I don't know. I don't know. Both are bad.
Both are bad, yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard when you're trying to deal with it too, because you've got the host. Because like when the host comes to you, it's like, so I find most of like the conversation we have pretty boring. What should I do about it? It's like
why do you
cut
say
in?
that?
Ask Reddit.
Right. You're the host. You need to make it interesting.
This was your choice
exactly.
to talk to these people about this subject. Like, what do you mean you don't care about the conversation?
Right.
Well, now that wait, I forgot. I have a horror story.
What about you?
I forgot
Yeah.
about that. Oh goodness. Okay. Well, this one is more irritating. I'm upset. Like I'm not proud. But so I used to be the co-host of this podcast for ecosystem builders in the entrepreneurship community. And let me just say I hate it when states have cities named after other states, because I was interviewing people all across the US, and there was this person who was from Kansas City, Missouri, and I'm an idiot and I said Kansas, and it's like, oh yeah, it'll be great to cover the Kansas community. And when she replied back to me, she was, very sweet. And then we laughed about it when I was actually interviewing her. But prior, she was like capitalizing Kansas City whenever she would mention it. It's like, oh, yes, I can't wait to talk about Kansas City, Missouri. And I'm like, gosh dang it. Like, I'm not. I feel like a dumbass, but I know what I'm talking about. I've traveled across like most US states. Like, that is something I have done, but I still hate it. It's just, why? Why would you, as another state, as the state of Missouri, why would you name a big old
That's a good
city
question.
after another state? Like, you trying to simp or something, like, for the other state, or what, you know?
Yeah, they do.
Well,
they just love
to
to.
be
your
fair,
ground.
it does run into Kansas. Like, Kansas City is a big old city. Like, that is, they just drew the lines of Missouri and Kansas, and then Kansas City was just like, hey, we're gonna forget your lines and we're just gonna do what we want. Sorry. Like,
Yeah.
It is.
Like-
It is.
I
a
like
little
Kansas City
confusing.
more than Missouri.
I
It
know.
is confused. Is there a Kansas City in Kansas?
There is?
Yeah. Yeah,
There
it's,
is
it's,
Kansas
split-
City,
it splits the
Kansas.
border.
It's just
Yeah,
not
it splits the border between the
Kansas
two.
City.
I hate
Yeah,
it.
It's
so
not
the
the-
stadiums, the
yeah.
sports stadiums are on the Missouri side, and then the actual like living areas are on the Kansas side.
Oh wait, so you're saying that Kansas City,
Yeah.
the Kansas City, is in both states, kind of?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
it's split between the two. It's
It
so it's
straddles
like
the
Dubuque.
states? That's weird.
Yeah,
It's like in
it's-
Dubuque,
they
Iowa, and
literally-
Illinois.
Yeah, they literally I kid you not. When I talk about Kansas City, I'm like saying forget your state lines. They literally just said forget your state lines. I'm gonna do what I want to do, and they just built the city across all. Like it really is just. It's
Is
just a
Kansas City the
huge-
capital of Missouri?
No, it's not the capital of either state.
My fifth grade
Right, well, I guess it
geography
can't be.
teacher would be so disappointed in me for
Yeah.
not remembering.
And here's the 10-minute geography lesson from Kelsey.
Yeah.
Hey,
It's
sorry,
not a break in the
something
audio.
I learned about Kelsey very quickly. Something I learned about Kelsey very quickly is like if you start talking about like just geography, he's like he's on it.
Yeah.
He knows
Man.
he knows what's going on.
Really?
But I do feel kind of sad about Josue. Josue, have you spent a lot of time in
Yeah,
the
like
US?
7 years.
Any?
Yeah, like 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
lived in
Just a little-
Minnesota.
Yeah, dude. 7 years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Sorry.
okay. Yeah, man. I
I
know
knew
my
that you
stuff now. No,
lived in
okay.
Russia for a while.
Yeah, I did live in Russia for 3
What?
years. Yeah, I studied there for 3 years. Then I went to Minnesota. So from the cold to
Ooh,
the cold.
Gotcha.
I'm
And,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, cold to the cold, and then back to
and-
you're in
Well,
Costa Rica
no,
now,
then
right?
I went to California. I lived in LA for 2 years, and now I'm living in Costa Rica. Yep.
From
Cool.
Minnesota to LA, that is like okay. So from Russia to Minnesota is like all right. Well, that's same. Like you know, no big
Same
deal.
thing. Yeah.
Minnesota to LA though, that's like that is about as night and day as it gets.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would
Like
say.
was that weird for you? Like just to switch to the
Well,
the LA culture?
It's funny because I actually never really liked the cold. For me, it was more of a climate thing. So switching to LA was actually pretty cool for me. I really liked it.
Yeah.
Also, the culture. I guess it was more for me. Like it's very similar to Latin American countries. So yeah, it's very different. Especially coming from Costa Rica, the climate, the people. I guess it was just more of my thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Conversa party at Josue's house.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
Love it.
Right.
Thanks for the invite, Josue.
That's right.
Jeremy, just buy
Yep.
us all tickets.
Conversa.
Thanks.
Oh yeah, sure.
Team building exercise.
Just charge it onto the
Yeah.
Conversa card.
Episode 2 will be from Josue's live and in person.
I want to
Live
have.
from-
We
live
should do
from
an
Costa Rica.
episode about Josue's time living in Russia. I mean, that is fascinating to me, and I've known about this for a while, but we've never actually had a conversation about it. I mean, obviously, like these days, Russia kind of sucks. Like they're waging war in like the worst country on earth. But you lived there obviously before that. But
Yeah.
it was obviously post-Soviet Union, right?
Yes, post-Soviet Union, and
Right.
but it's interesting because I always talk about this, but I feel like all the tradition is still there. It never left them. It's always there, and like the political party from the left, it's always like okay, people say Russia's not a communist country anymore, but everything related to communism is still there.
Wow.
So, even their mentality, right? It's like they, they don't like spending a lot of money. They're not a very like, how how would you say, like a capitalist, country in any way, right? So they have this mentality where everything is like, let's live on very little money, let's live on very little supplies. So it's always that kind of mentality, almost for everyone. I'm not saying for maybe for all the millionaires and all of that, it's a different story, but most people live like that there.
Dang.
Yeah, I don't know.
So-
I'd sort of, part of me was like, it'd be really interesting to go to Russia, but part of me is like, no, it wouldn't. I just don't want to. It would be interesting, but
Yeah,
well, especially now, like you
I
don't want to go
think
there.
Yeah, I think visiting is always worth it, right? Like just
Yeah.
get to know the Kremlin, all the Red Square and all of that. It's really cool, but living there is another story.
I'm
Living
sure.
there, especially as a foreigner, it's
Right.
and they don't like Moscow doesn't like foreigners. That's what they say, and they even say it like it's not a secret.
Now we now have like introduced ourselves. We have told our spooky stories. And hopefully now by this point, the audience is understanding that it's like, hey, we want to entertain you all, but also educate you about what we are, what we do, and all about podcasting and how you can start your own podcast. Now, one of the things that we do with clients is help them pick names for their show. There's a few things that go into picking the proper name. But I think it would be very fun for all of you guys to get a sneak peek just to see what kind of like the process can look like. So without further ado, now that we all have a general idea of like who we are, let's go ahead and start out with some names for this potential podcast. I have two, so I can start us off and open the floor. My first one, going something a bit simple, one idea was the Connversa Company podcast. Straightforward, and also feel free to make your pitch as car salesman-y as you can. That's also a blast. But my other one, just to like spice it up, maybe make it a little humorous, is a forced company bonding time, because we also really care about company culture here. So that was my second
Forced.
forced company bonding time.
That sounds
The
like the Russian division of the company, like the Soviet.
So in
Forced
case you
company
are
bonding
all
time.
wondering,
Absolute
yes,
pleasure.
Caitlin does have like a little button that tases us anytime we do something that she's not proud of.
Yep, it's true. It's right over there.
All right,
You see
I
a
like
light flash up on
here.
the screen behind me.
I kind of like forced company bonding time. Or
Yeah, that was cool.
that sounds
Yeah.
like that would be like a
That's
good
pretty good.
workplace sitcom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can we please start with the Office theme? Just like
We already did
after the project Michael and I are working on, I have the Office theme where it's stuck in my head now.
Yeah.
We could do like an Office ripoff, just like Fiverr
Office,
it
but
out to
horror?
somebody. And it's like, listen, here's the vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Can we tell them to make it Office but
The
horror?
Podfist.
The
Podfist. The
Podfist.
Podfist.
The
Ooh.
Podfist. Wow.
Ooh, let's write
The
these things down, folks.
Podtopus.
I feel like we're getting into
Octopus?
Podfather range.
Like an octopus, but for podcasting.
Thanks for the explanation, Jeremy.
There's
I
six
mean,
of
I
us.
don't know. I
It
don't know
makes
if we
it
should
funnier
tempt the
when
James
you have
Bond
to explain
namings.
it.
It makes it funnier.
All right, well,
Definitely keep this
let's
in there.
rip through some more names.
All right, Josh, lay it on us.
I mean, I like the Podfist now. I did come up with the PodShop, kind of like the workshop,
The Pod Shop. Okay.
because like, talking pod shop, and the conversations we've had about this show has been about like, making sure that it's an educational resource for people that like have no idea how to start a podcast. And one of the things I'd really like to see is like, and Jeremy, we talked about this, is like there being at least one question that we answer in each episode, right? So for this episode, it's how to name a podcast,
Mhm.
right? And giving people an example
Of what not to do.
of how you do that. And what not to do. Yeah. Don't name your podcast the Podfist.
No, the platypus. The platypus
Don't-
was the one we don't
The
want.
Podfist.
Don't make a podcast next to an airport.
So
Yeah,
yes,
that's
also that.
pro tip number one.
Unless it's about
So,
airports.
but yeah, I guess so. That would be nice.
Yeah.
right?
That'd be kind of
We
cool.
know
If
our
your
next
podcast
client
is about
target.
airports, you got like built-in sound effects.
Just the
Yep.
whooshing in the background.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I could add some of those.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I think it'd be better to just like do it inside of an airport with all like
okay,
the
so you like
announcements
the
and
real
stuff.
stuff. All the Foley.
I was just gonna do it in an airplane
Yeah,
at that point in time.
All right.
Yeah.
Wait, so what was your
I
name
was-
again, Josh? You had a good one.
The PodShop
That's
was
a
what
good
I
one.
came up
I like
with,
that.
like my
PodShop.
serious name.
Okay.
Yeah,
Shop. Excellent.
PodShop.
Should I go?
Michael, I know you have to leave also in about 10 minutes. What do you got?
I've got a couple of, I guess, like 4 like real ones. I just kind of went off the chain, and then one funny one. Podcast for podcasting, podcast for podcasters, podcasters about podcasting, the art of podcasts, and then the funny one, the best podcast that you'll never listen to.
Good one. What's funny about that?
That's actually
I like it.
It's a clickbait title, and it's something
pretty
you actually will
meta,
click
yeah.
on, right? Because it's like, oh, nobody's ever going to listen to this. I'm going to feel special today by listening.
No
to
one's listening to this,
it. So it's
All
kind
right.
of,
and the YouTube gods told me I need to listen
Yeah,
to
we're
it.
like,
it's that thing where you say, don't, oh yeah, go ahead and touch that, do that to your kid, and they're not
Have
going
you
to do it
seen those
because
like
you told
don't
them to do
read
it.
don't read this book? Like don't listen
Yeah.
to this podcast.
Yeah,
That would be good too. Don't listen to this podcast. The best podcast you'll never listen
This
to. I like
podcast
it.
will.
Mm-hmm.
The best podcast that will be deleted in 48
Yeah.
hours.
This podcast will self-destruct in 2 minutes.
Oh,
Actually, that's a cool idea. What if you did a podcast where the whole thing was each episode only exists for like an hour, and then it's
so
gone.
somebody did that. Somebody
really?
did that. But it was a YouTube series, and they did episodes. They did like an episode each week, and they did it for a year, and they said it's only going to last until it's over, and then they deleted all of it.
Really?
Oh gosh.
Yep.
And was that a good, like, did it work?
It caught
It
national
worked.
news.
It did work. Really?
It did. Made national news.
Wow. And now it's gone forever.
Yeah, all the episodes. I can't even
Wow.
remember the hosts. You got any ideas?
Well,
Kelsey? No.
they could have. Some people could have ripped it.
Oh
It's
yeah, I'm
probably
sure
out
it's
there.
somewhere.
Oh,
But
Look, it
like,
goes on the
that
internet.
was
It
the
stays on the
concept
internet.
that they stuck to.
Right. Huh. Interesting. Okay.
It's like it's just a file folder, like the forbidden
Yeah. Right.
YouTube series.
Yeah.
That's right. The Lost series.
I dare you to download this. I dare you to listen to this. This doesn't have a
I
virus in it.
swear.
Yeah.
I
Or
promise.
does it? Yeah.
Dun dun dun.
It's like, oh, I found this USB drive in a parking lot. I should totally plug it into my computer.
Sounds like a
Every
crazy
time.
man.
What could go
Every
wrong?
time.
The best podcast no one's
Every
listens
time.
to.
But that is the best
Actually,
podcast you'll never listen to. That actually is a pretty good name.
I did
Thank
take
you.
note of that one. All right, and then there were
Four of
four.
us,
So let's see. Kelsey, what do you got?
So I got one is pretty simple, kind of play on the name Connversa. Core conversations, but core CONNVERSA stations.
Oh,
So, well,
Very clever.
alliteration.
Mhm,
And then
I
the
love
other
it.
one is stuck on record.
Oh.
Ah,
That's a cool one. I
That's a
really
good
like that
one. Okay.
Yeah.
Word. I like it.
I've got the Russian podcast now. I'm kidding.
He's got the red room.
The red, just call it the red room. I still
yeah.
don't know what that
The
is.
Red Room. No, it's a Marvel thing actually, but
Oh, it's a Marvel.
yeah,
thing.
it's a
Oh,
Marvel
yeah.
thing. Yeah. But in Russia, it's they took it from a room where people used to do ballet,
Uh-huh.
and so it was a red room. It was it was just that really, and so but there are some horror stories.
Supposedly that's how they
have
train Russian
killed
spies.
other people there.
Oh, okay. I'm not a Marvel guy,
And
so I
so-
just don't know
What?
those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Jeremy.
Yeah.
All
well,
right, well,
I
Jeremy's
was-
not invited back to the next episode.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
oh wow.
That's right.
It's like just hardcore bullying. I was thinking a future episode we should do a roast episode where we just
Yeah.
roast each other. But
That would be fun.
Yeah.
I was
That's not
thinking
every episode.
No.
yeah. that's-
Oh man, I
fair,
miss my
too.
cue.
Yeah. No, for the real name, I was thinking, since the company name is Connversa, I was thinking of Conversation Nation.
Okay.
That's a good one.
Little rhyming.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. That was my 2 cents.
Okay, so I had a couple ideas. So one is, and this is maybe the only one that was like a serious idea,
Uh-huh.
was confab theory. The word confab, it's kind of a cool word. It means like it means like a discussion amongst a group. It can also mean like a secret discussion. But I just like the word confab. And actually that was one of, when I was thinking of names for the company, because we used to be called Tribal Knowledge Podcasting. And maybe in another podcast we can talk about why we changed the name. But anyway, coming up with a new name, a lot of it is like finding a URL that's not already been taken, you know, a .com, because I wanted it to be .com. And one of the ideas was, confab theory, but it was going to cost, like, it was one of those where you could buy the domain if you wanted. And so I had no idea. Some of these domains, or that one was like $10,000 for some reason.
No,
I'm like,
thanks.
probably not a good investment of our money. So, but I like the name, the confab theory. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll use that for something else. So that could be maybe a podcast name. I thought Podcastomania could be kind of fun. I loved, have you guys ever seen the Comedy Central show Nathan For You? Do you know what that is?
Yes.
Yep.
So, Caitlin, I think you'd love it. It's sort of
guys
hard
need
to
to see it.
explain exactly like what's so awesome about it. But Podcasting For You, just as like a play off of that. I also thought two other ideas, because like one of the core things, and like we were talking about, Josh and I were talking about this the other day, I think both with you, Caitlin, and you, Kelsey, too, that a lot of what we do, like I think a lot of what we offer to clients is we make it fun. We make podcasting fun, that like we really want this to be an enjoyable experience. And it's also useful and, you know, helps drive revenue, all that stuff, but it is also just fun on like some very basic level. So one possible name, Podcasting is Fun, or Fun with Podcasting. And I imagine the visual of, do you remember the poster for the movie 40-Year-Old Virgin?
Yes.
When it's Steve Carell just kind of like staring off into space, like this like beautiful smile on his face.
Yes.
It's kind of like, it's like like what if the cover was just like our faces just sort of in that pose of like looking off, like, you know, into the distance. We just called like Podcasting is Fun, almost like a kid's show or something like that.
Can it be written in finger paint?
Oh my gosh.
Like that's all I ask. Is like it's like a finger paint,
or like bubble
title.
letters or something like that.
Yeah, I can definitely, and then like touch it up, make everyone's face like just look like they got highlight on, and just like,
Make us look like the Wiggles or something. Just like a
Like-
kid
I've
show.
definitely got to get this Bane mask before then. I'm gonna wear the Bane mask for it and be like,
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah,
you
there
just
you
make
go.
me the shadow character.
oh my
Right.
gosh.
So those are my contributions.
I like that. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I got distracted with we lost two of our members, and then I was like, oh, he said the platypus, the platypus, the podcast, whatever. it was
Podctopus.
Did anybody say behind the mic out of any curiosity? Because that just popped into my head.
Oh,
that could be an
no,
interesting one.
behind the mic.
I wouldn't
like
do
that.
Jeremy,
but
you
I'm-
had my brain start to think. And
I'm
now
pretty
you
sure
gotta
that one's been taken.
Yeah, I think that was
Probably.
taken.
Yeah,
Or
it
some
sounds too
version of
good.
that,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
But okay.
Good. But I will say, like, we have
Hippopotamus.
get- Ooh,
The hippopotamus.
I don't know how the logo would look, but I think that's cool.
It'd be a hippopotamus talking into a microphone with headphones.
Jeremy, have you been watching PBS lately?
No. Why do they
It
have?
feels like I feel like it's like it's like PBS Sunday mornings is
Well, did
like
you
all
ever
of a
see?
sudden where our
Did you guys
theme
ever
is.
watch Flight of the Conchords, the HBO show?
Yep.
So they have a skit. It's they do like this really silly rap, like a rap battle, and one of the guys' rap names is the Hip Hoppopotamus.
cute.
We could be the hippopotamus.
I just think of that TikTok audio. My money don't jiggle jiggle. It
Yeah, right.
folds.
Oh my god, I recently downloaded TikTok, and I'm like, okay,
I'm
what's the
sorry.
big hype? And
Yup.
I ended up watching like people doing a dance to that particular thing like 80 times in a row. And I'm just like, what is this? Like where did... And then
And
I
you
You're
tried
like,
keep
to
what
scrolling.
is this hype?
yeah, I tried to learn about the guy, like where does that come from? And then it stuck in my brain, of course, for like days after that.
Yep. Unfortunately,
stop
that's
scrolling.
a curse.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
The dopamine screen, you know
Mhm.
it.
and then you get the TikTok warning, hey, you've been scrolling for a long time. Maybe you should put your phone down.
Yeah, and you're like, please stop judging
Maybe go
me.
outside.
Yeah.
No.
Like, maybe get some vitamin D somewhere. Like, what if I don't want to? What if
I don't
Touch
need it.
some
entertain me?
grass.
Right.
Let's see. Well, we have a very good list. Now, I think some of the ones that are standing out to me the most are the best podcast you'll never listen to. Like, we've got quite a few. So here's what I'm thinking we do, because we're running out of time. In fact, we are on the minute. What I would like to do is I would like us to, I'm going to put this all together. We as a company will look at it one more time, and then I'd actually like to open it up to the audience for some audience participation. I was thinking we can then go to our Instagram polls and offer people, one, to submit an idea for the podcast. If they're like, oh, these fools on microphones, they missed the best idea. I have the best idea.
Fools on microphones.
Fools on, you know what?
Fools
Write
on
that down. Write
microphones.
that
I
down.
love that.
Wow, fools on microphones. I like that one.
Fools on microphones.
Microphones.
That's,
Just
that
the
might
truth.
be the best
Stashing
one
the
of
good
all.
one. She was stashing the good one for later.
Yeah, right. You buried the lead there.
Well, you know
That
what
just came out.
It did.
That was good.
So we can potentially then open this up to the floor and get some audience participation, see what they think, what the audience members like. But now I kind of like fools on microphones. But anyway, but before we kind of close out, I guess, do we have any final thoughts that we want to share before I go ahead and read the outro?
Well, I'll just say that this was a ton of fun. And, I want to let our listeners know that this whole idea to do this podcast was Caitlin's idea. And, Caitlin really made it happen. And so awesome job on that. I'm really glad that we're doing this. I think it's a great way for the team to get together. Because, I think Josh mentioned we're all remote.
Right.
And that has a lot of advantages in some ways. We can, it allows me to find like the best people wherever they are. But we're remote, so we don't get to hang out with each other. And, there's something missing there. So I think this is really a great way just to get together and have fun and laugh a little bit and get to know each other. So kudos to Caitlin. Great job on this. I'm glad we're doing it.
Yay.
Thanks,
Yeah.
team. Well,
Yeah.
we have our final thoughts out there. So go ahead and follow our Instagram and socials. We are on Instagram and TikTok, Connversa Podcasting. And then make sure to check out our website, www.connversa.com. That's with 2 N's, by the way. And make sure to follow us here on your favorite podcasting platform. We will see you all in the next episode.
Thank
Bye.
you guys.
Bye-bye.